Donald Trump is engaging in a very public battle against the CDC, the Centers for Disease Control, and the guidelines that they had issued when it comes to reopening schools. Now, we had previously shared some of those guidelines with you. The CDC's guidance, which was updated more than a week ago, calls for keeping desks 6 feet apart, staggering arrival and dismissal times, and also canceling field trips and other large gatherings in communities where there is minimal to moderate spread of COVID-19. The agency also recommends dismissals of longer than 2 weeks in communities where there is substantial spread of the disease. Now, pretty much every community is experiencing rapid increases in new coronavirus cases. And as we had previously predicted, now we're seeing an uptick in the number of coronavirus deaths as well. So anytime you hear anyone trying to minimize coronavirus as something that's only impacting young, healthy, asymptomatic people, just understand that that's a lie, and it really is putting people's health and lives at risk. Now, Donald Trump did not agree with this guidance. He thinks that this is disastrous. He called it impractical, too difficult to follow. And so there was a question about whether or not the CDC would switch gears in order to appease Donald Trump. Those questions certainly became a little more aggressive after Vice President Pence framed the CDC's forthcoming guidance as a response to Trump's criticisms, saying it would offer more clarity. So people were suspicious and questioned whether the CDC would maybe loosen some of this guidance in order to keep Trump happy. George Stephanopoulos actually asked the director of the CDC about this. Let's take a look at what he had to say.
Vice President Pence said quite clearly yesterday that the CDC is revising school guidelines because the president thinks they are too tough. Should the doctors and scientists of the CDC be taking that kind of political direction from the president?
I want to clarify, really what we're providing is different reference documents. So our guidelines are our guidelines, but we are going to provide additional reference documents to aid basically communities that are trying to reopen K through 12s. It's not a revision of the guidelines. It's just to provide additional information to help the schools be able to use the guidance that we put forward.
So if you listen to that answer and you still have questions, I don't blame you. So did George Stephanopoulos, and he has to follow up. Take a look.
Well, the vice president said it was a revision. He said he was doing it at the president's direction. Which guidelines are too tough? Which guidelines are impractical?
I think it's important, George, to realize, and you use the word guidelines. That's what CDC has done. They provide guidances, they're not requirements. And again, the purpose of them, and I think it's really important to emphasize to parents around this country, the purpose of those guidance is to help local jurisdictions open their schools.
The guidelines you had there said that kids should be 6 feet apart. There should be social distancing. There should be no communal spaces. Are you revising any of those guidelines at the direction of the president?
Right now, we're continuing to work with the local jurisdictions to how they want to take the portfolio of guidance that we've given to make them practical for their schools to reopen.
Sir, no one wants to keep the schools closed, but everybody wants to make sure the schools are safe before they are open again. And that's what I keep trying to ask you about. Which of these guidelines are you looking to relax? Should students be 6 feet apart?
I think we have to continue to work with the schools. As I said, there's a whole portfolio that the schools can look at to see what's the right mix for them.
Which of these guidelines are too tough? Which of these guidelines are impractical?
Again, I think it depends on how the schools put the portfolio together.
There are no winners in this story at all. The American people certainly don't win. Donald Trump is a disaster, and the question dodging in that interview was pretty devastating, especially, and I get it. I mean, look, you're dealing with an administration that has an unhinged individual who's only interested in his own self-interest, right? His political career and how he can improve the economy enough so he gets reelected. Remember, if you reopen the schools, what does that mean? It means that parents don't need to take care of their kids when they're at home and not going to school. And economists see that as a potential upside for the economy. So that's part of the reason why Donald Trump is pushing to prematurely open these schools. And he also wants everything to look normal, as if we're not dealing with this rapidly growing pandemic in our country. And one final note, Cenk, Trump asked, well, Germany's opening up their schools, why can't we? It's because Germany did what it needed to do to get a firm handle on this virus. We did not do that. People keep talking about how we're in the second wave. We're not in the second wave, we're still in the first wave. Many states didn't even take the proper precautions early on during this pandemic. And when the second wave comes, I am honestly terrified because remember, you have to couple coronavirus with the regular annual uptick in flus that we experience every year. And we already have hospitals that are overwhelmed and do not have enough space for new patients.
So Trump asked, hey, if Germany can open them, why can't we? Well, I have a very clear answer to that. On Tuesday, Germany had 390 new cases of coronavirus. Wow, 390, that sounds like a lot. How many did we have? 50,940. So in a country the size of Germany, 390 cases is not that bad. We're obviously larger than Germany, but not by that much. 50,000 cases is a disaster. So let's do nuance as we always do here. So are kids more likely to die from coronavirus? No, they are far less likely to die from coronavirus. It is very rare for them to die. There's a 17-year-old who died in Florida recently, but she had plenty of pre-existing conditions. It's not impossible, but it's unlikely. Are we still worried about the kids getting sick? Of course we are. But that's not our predominant concern. The main concern is twofold. One is the people that they bring it back home to, their parents and their grandparents, because they carry the disease. So it's not like Trump and the Republicans keep saying, the kids don't get that sick. No, they're 100% infected. They don't die, and oftentimes don't even have the symptoms as anywhere near as bad as adults do. But they're 100% infected, and they could spread that infection just as easily to their parents and grandparents, okay? Secondly, the teachers, they gotta stay in an indoor place with 20, 30, 40, 50 kids nonstop, let alone the hundreds of kids in the overall school. And some of the teachers are middle-aged, older, some of them have pre-existing conditions. Some teachers are saying, I got 2, 3 pre-existing conditions and I'm in my 60s. You're gonna send me in there to sit in a building with hundreds of kids? Almost certainly some of them are infected, right? It's a death sentence for some of these teachers. So why do the Republicans want it so bad? Anna's right. It isn't about we kid around about how it's hard to homeschool the kids, etc. And there's these real reasons why you want the kids to go back to the schools. No. These idiot Republicans think that we're out of work voluntarily. So they think, if we cut the unemployment checks and we make the kids go back to school, then the people won't have an excuse anymore not to go to work. You idiot, they were fired. They were fired, you morons. They're not trying to find BS excuses not to go back to work. So, but they firmly believe it, and that's why they're trying to push the kids back into school, because in their mind, that's going to help the economy. Well, all it's going to do is affect all the parents and grandparents, and definitely the teachers. And so we all want the kids to go back to school, but not if it's not safe. And right now, it is not remotely safe. Still, we lead the world in cases. Still, we lead the world in deaths. And look, we showed you that chart before. Europe's coronaviruses go up and then they go down. Ours go up and then go up. We're a disaster. 135,000 dead. We lead the world in number of deaths. Trump doesn't know what he's doing. And when it comes to the CDC, last thing on that, look, they bungled it through and through. The Redfield that you just saw, he's totally incompetent. He's actually a religious zealot of it on his own. In the beginning, they really screwed up the testing royally, and it cost us untold number of lives. But I don't get the sense that he has bad intent. I think that in a situation like this, he's stuck, and he's like, I'm not gonna change the guidelines because that would kill people. But I'm not gonna tell you that I disagree with Trump because that would get me fired, and then the new guy would then be even worse than me. So he's stuck in an unwinnable position. It's the beginning bungling was his fault. Now it's 100% Trump's fault.
So I want to go to the last graphic here because this is a still frame from Fox News. So I'm glad that they're at least reporting this. And if you look at the numbers, total cases have surpassed 3 million. And total deaths is, at this point, honestly, it's 133,000, over 133,000. And then we hit a single day record on Wednesday of this week with 62,751 new cases on Wednesday alone. I mean, it's insane. And you look at that map and every single state is red because every single state is being negatively impacted by Donald Trump's lack of leadership and incompetence, absolute incompetence when it comes to dealing with this pandemic. I also just want to quickly note the COVID tracking project has just shared, and I also shared this on Twitter, that nationally the 7-day average in deaths has begun to rise after extended decline. So the last 3 days were the highest numbers we've seen since June. So for all the people who kept saying like, no, deaths are down, we're totally fine. Just young people are getting it. No, young people don't live in an isolated island, okay? They go home to their families. 1 in 5 Americans lives in a multi-generational home, meaning you got grandma and grandpa living there, or you have, you're living with your parents who are probably older. This is a disastrous way of handling the pandemic. Everyone knows it, and we're paying the consequences for it right now. And it's gonna get worse if we don't do something.
Let me give you one last depressing fact. So the Americas now account for half the deaths in the world. We lead the world in America, but Brazil's now number 2. And their incompetent fascist leader, so incompetent he himself got coronavirus, Bolsonaro did. But more importantly, they're trying to catch us. It's nearly impossible to catch us, the number of cases, but they're closing fast. But now the 3rd hotspot in the world, here comes India. And India is 4 times larger than us. When that virus rips through India, and it has begun to, it is gonna be a nightmare for the world. And so, remember when the idiot Donald Trump said it would magically disappear in the summer because it can't stand the heat, and that it would just go away. Well, I can assure you, it's hot in America, it's hot in Brazil, and it's definitely hot in India, and it has not gone away. So this thing is here, unfortunately, for quite some time, and we've got to start acting like it.
When you sign up for a spend and save account at aspiration.com/TYT, we will plant 10 trees. Let's save the planet together.